Hello, my name's Mistress Corin of the Wood, and today I'm from the Barony of Borealis, and today I'm going to make some pork pie for Yule Feast. So I'm going to, first of all, get all my ingredients together, like this. The pastry part is made of butter and flour and some water and an egg. And the filling is made from some eggs and some ground pork and dates and blue cheese and cinnamon and ginger. It's a fairly simple recipe, and we'll set this here and carry on. Flour, 2 cups, goes into here. And then we crack 1 egg into there. We have to rub the egg together with the flour. So this is just going to be, it's going to turn kind of crumbly, and the egg has to be well mixed through the flour. You won't be able to see much of the egg anymore once we're done with this. It's just kind of loose. Now we need to have 3 tablespoons of butter and 100 milliliters of hot water to melt the butter. So hopefully my water is still hot here. That feels hot. That feels like too much water. Yeah, that's close enough. We'll stir this a little bit with my finger so that the butter melts. This may take a moment. I did cut it into small chunks so that it would melt fairly quickly. And let's try working that into here now. So the water and the butter goes into the flour, and we work it together, and hopefully this will make a nice pastry which will hold up well when we try to shape it, because back in the day they didn't use pie plates, and so I'm going to try to make a stand-up crust on a clay tile. This is going together quite nicely. Usually this crust works quite well for me. It's the original recipe, I believe, called for 2 egg yolks instead of 1 egg. But I find that why should I waste the rest of the egg and just use the yolk? So I've been using, for quite a while now, I've just used 1 egg instead of 2 yolks, and it makes a pretty nice crust. This is a little bit more stretchy and less flaky than a traditional pastry, because you want to have something that holds up well. It's the same pastry that I also use for making pasties, and you want to have a pastry for that that does not break up very easily. Yes, it's a little bit tougher than what you would normally expect of pastry dough, or pastry crust, but it's going to be actually quite good for this particular purpose. There, the flour or the pastry dough has been worked together. I divided it into about 1/3 and 2/3. 2/3 of it I've rolled out here, and the 1/3, as you can see, is a lovely little ball right now. Works very well, holds together beautifully. Okay, now comes the hard part. And you don't have to do this. You can use a ready-made pie crust, or just make your own pie crust as any way you like. I've got a clay tile here. This goes on top of here. And I'm going to try to build a crust that stands up. This takes a bit of crimping and a little bit of pushing down. And it'll take me a little while to get this together, but this is what they did back in medieval times if they wanted to make a coffin to put the meat into. I should just mention that meat or meat mixtures put inside a coffin and baked with a complete lid over top of it, completely sealed, was actually the medieval way of preserving meat. It was a little bit like canning that we do now. The meat would be completely enclosed, and then the heat of baking would kill all the microbes on the inside, and the crust would completely seal the meat inside, and it would keep for several weeks that way at least. If at colder temperatures, it might last even longer. One to make the crust even more resistant to letting bacteria in would be to add more salt to the crust. It might then not be quite as edible, but it would preserve the meat on the inside, and that was a pretty important thing. Okay, this is going to take a little bit more playing. Well, it took a little while, but I've got something that looks like a stand-up pie crust, as you can see. And I've also rolled out the cover for it already, and it's lying ready. And so now we're going to get started on the filling itself. I've got the ground pork here. I've got a little bit of the cheese. I should mention that I've decided to I took my recipe from the Coquinaria page, and I like that page better than working directly from Cindy Renfrow's Take 1,000 Eggs or More, because the Coquinaria page has a little bit more detail, gives a little more history. But the recipe in there is for 6 small tarts. I decided that I wanted to have an actual pie, and so I've doubled the ingredients. So the amount of pork I've used is about a little bit less than the size of lump you get from a pound of butter. The packages of the blue cheese are 125 grams each. I need 160 grams if I'm going to double it. So if I'm going to double the 80 grams that's called for in the recipe. So that and a little bit more. And I've already chopped my dates here, so I'll throw those in. And we have the ground cinnamon and ginger, 1 teaspoon of each is in here, and I'll sprinkle that over top. And then what we need is 3 eggs in there. And then we mix up the whole lot, and that should give us a nice filling. It's a bit of a mess right now. There we go. 1, 2, and 1 more. I have some more eggs lying nearby. Those are for the decoration on top, because we want this to be a very nice looking pie. So here's all our ingredients in the bowl, and I'm going to mix those up and try to make them fit in the shell. All right, we've got the meat mixture all mixed up. It was rather a messy job, especially at first, but we got a fairly good mixture in here now. And now it's time to put the top on. The top's going to get rather decorated, but we'll just drop this on top of here right now. It's a little bit larger than what we need, but that's good because I'm going to have to do a little bit of folding and crimping to get it to fit tightly around the edges. Now, if this was going to be a pie that needed to be preserved for a long time, I would definitely not do any more work on the top. But because this is for a Yule feast and we want it to look very special, I'm going to decorate it in a little while with some fancy folding and some egg yolks. But the first part is to get this to crimp on to here. So I'm going to just fold this over the edge and really pinch it hard so that it stays there. I hope you can see that. It needs to be wet underneath there, so I just kind of brush it a little bit with water, and we pinch this closed nice and tight. This is actually going easier than I thought, so maybe I can do this all in one run. There. Come on. There we go. And the nice part about this dough is that it really stretches quite well and does not tear very easily. So you can make it into quite a nice crust. So this is what people would have done many centuries ago when they didn't have pie plates to form the pie, and just simply make it self-supporting. I'm going to cut this into 6 now. I'll just not cutting all the way to the edge, but I am going to do a little bit of decorative work on the crust so that it'll be a nice presentation piece. There we go. Okay, now this is something I saw somewhere. Just fold this back and then fold it back in again, like that. Just a moment, we'll fold this up. There, can you see how I did that? I fold this back and then fold it this way again, and you get a very pretty pattern on the crust. Come on, come loose. There we go. This goes back and folds in. This goes back and folds in. There and there. And now we have these very convenient little spots right all the way around, and that's where we're going to put in our egg yolks. Hard-boiled eggs, and we get the yolks from them, and we put those on just so. I'll tip that over in just a moment so you can have a good look at it. And there it is, all ready for the oven. And here's the pie, fresh out of the oven. The egg yolks have toasted a little bit, as you can see, and the edges are nicely brown. The pie held together quite well, although there was a little bit of moisture came up, and it was rather, some of the moisture ran out on one side, but it had something else underneath it to catch that, so that didn't matter. Yeah, it's ready to serve up. 6 very large pieces or 12 smaller pieces. It should be baked right through because I gave it about twice as much time as what was in the Coquinaria recipe, and I think that this will work out really well for us. Hope that yours, if you try to make one of these, turns out very well too. Happy eating!